Hello, second grade, and welcome to Unit 3, Week 3. We're going to begin with our vocabulary words. Our first word is the word insists. If someone insists on something, they say firmly that it must be done. So if your mom might insist that you clean your room before you go outside to play. So they're telling you something in a firm way, and it's something that they want you to get done right away. Your next word is the word countryside. The countryside is an area of land that's far away from cities and large towns. It's usually very quiet. There's a lot of trees. People who live in the countryside have houses that are usually really far apart from each other. Your next word is the word villages. Villages are like small little communities or towns in a particular country. Your next word is the word across. If people go across something, they go from one side of it to the other side. Next, we have the word borrow. When you borrow something, you are taking it from someone for a period of time and you made an agreement to give it back. So if I borrow your pencil, I may use it for a little bit, but I'm going to return it to you. That's what borrow means, that you're going to use something with the intention of returning it. Next, we have the word lonely. A lonely place is one that very few people visit. So lonely in general means something or someone that's usually by themselves. There's not a lot of people there. There's not a lot of people visiting or talking to that person or visiting that area. Next, we have the word idea. An idea is a thought or a plan that you have for doing something. So you may have an idea for a new game, and that idea would have what the game would look like, what the rules might be, how many people might be able to play. So an idea is a thought or a plan that you have for something. And our last word for our vocabulary this week is the word solution. A solution is a way to answer a problem. So if I ask you for the solution of 2 plus 2, you'll tell me the solution is 4. 2 plus 2 is 4. So a solution is an answer or an explanation for how you found an answer to a problem. This week, our vocabulary or our spelling words are going to focus on the long O sound and the different ways that we make the long O sound. So we have O by itself, if it's the only vowel in the word. We have OA, that vowel team, OW, and OE. So we're going to see these show up in different places in our spelling words this week. Our spelling words will be the word told, most, float, coast, toast, grow, mow, show, Joe, toe, light, mind, only, hour, and who. For our grammar and ELA notes, we're going to be working more with verbs. So we've been doing this for a little while now. We're going to be talking about past and present tense verbs. Now remember, when we're talking about a verb's tense, we're talking about when something is happening. So the verb tense tells us, did something happen in the past, a long time ago? Is it in the present where it's happening right now, or is it in the future that it's going to happen later? Now, past tense, again, means something that already happened, something that's already done, and it usually has an ED on the end of our verb to show us that it's something that's in the past. So remember, if you're talking about past tense, you're talking about something that's already finished. So think about something that you did yesterday or last week. That's something that's in the past. For future tense verbs, we're going to be talking about things that are happening in the future. Now, what does that mean? Future means something that has not happened yet, so something that you're planning for. So think about if you have plans to visit your neighbor tomorrow, or maybe you're going to your cousin's house next week. These are plans that are in the future. Now, when we're talking about things in the future, we add the word will before our verb. So we will do something. That's how we show that we're planning for it. Now, I have some examples for you with some example sentences of past tense verb and future tense verbs. So for our past tense verbs, remember, those usually end with an ED. So if you have the word flash, it becomes flashed. The shooting star flashed across the sky last night. So it's showing us that ED at the end of flashed is showing us that it's something that already happened. Walk becomes walked. My friend and I walked to school this morning. Look becomes looked. We looked at the trees on our way to school, and clean becomes cleaned. After our art lesson yesterday, we cleaned our areas. So all of these are sentences that are using past tense forms of their verbs to show us that it's something that's already happened in the past. Now for future tense verbs, remember we said we're going to add the word will before our verb to show that we will do that thing, or we're planning for it, but we haven't gotten to it yet. So help becomes will help. Tomorrow we will help our friends build a sandcastle. Find becomes will find. I will find the bedtime book after dinner. Show becomes will show. She will show her classmates her new drawing. And work will become will work. Our group will work together on a project. All right, and the next part of our notes is going to talk about letter punctuation. So when you're writing a letter to your friend, you have to add specific punctuation in different areas of your letter. And one of the kinds of punctuation that we're going to talk about today is a comma. Now we add a comma before the greeting, after the greeting of our letter and after the closing of our letter. Now, what are those parts? Now, the greeting is where you're opening your letter and you're talking to your person, you're addressing that person. So my letter over here says, Dear Omar, I hope you're having a great summer break. I went to a sleepover at my cousin's house last week. We had so much fun. We played hide and seek, tag, and leapfrog. I can't wait to show you the silly pictures we took. Your friend, Hamza. So over here where it says, Dear Omar, that's my opening, right? That's me starting my letter. It's telling you who I'm writing to. It's addressing or talking to that person. So when you have an opening, all the words in your opening are capitalized, right? Dear is because it's the first word, and Omar because it's a proper noun. It's a name of someone. I put a comma after that. So Dear Omar, comma. And I have the body of my letter where I'm telling Omar all the things that were done. And then at the end, your friend, comma, Hamza. So your friend is the closing, right? That's how you're showing that your letter has now come to an end and you're going to sign your name. So you always put your name right after the closing so the person knows who the letter is from. So your friend, comma, Hamza. So those are the places we're going to focus on adding punctuation for our letters for now. The next part of our notes is going to be about synonyms. So we've talked about these briefly in the past. Synonyms are words that have the same or a similar meaning to another word. So they don't need to be just one word. They can have more than one word in them. And I'm going to give you a couple examples. So remember, when you think of synonym, think of same. Synonym, same. They both start with the letter S. So another way to say large, you can say big, huge, they're all synonyms. Tiny, little, not big, small, those are all synonyms. Children, kids, youngsters, those are synonyms. Certain or sure, when you're certain of something or you're sure of something, those are synonyms. Fearless, not scared, or unafraid, those are also synonyms. If you say something is empty or bare or it has nothing inside, those are also synonyms. And then we have alone, solo, or by yourself. All of those have the same meaning as well. So make sure you refer back to these because some of the work, some of the questions that are in your work for this week are also here in our examples. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about for our notes this week are contractions. Now, we use contractions all the time, but sometimes we don't know the rules for them. So we're going to work on one specific contraction that we use all the time, and it's when we're making a contraction with the word not. Now, let's take a step back. A contraction is when we're putting two words together to make them into one smaller word. And in order to make it into a smaller word, we have to take some letters out. So usually what happens is our first word stays exactly the same, and then the second word that we're adding to it will lose some of its letters. And in the place of those letters, we're going to put an apostrophe. So an apostrophe looks just like a comma, but it's sitting higher up on the line. It's not sitting on the line, it's sitting up close to the top of our letters. So when we make a contraction with the word not, so if we say do not, we know that when we put the words do and not together, we say don't. So if I say, do not forget your backpack. It's the same thing as saying, don't forget your backpack. Now, when we're making a contraction, remember, a contraction just means, contraction comes from the word contract. And when something contracts, it gets kind of squished together, right? It tightens up. So when we have contractions with words, we're taking those words and we're squishing them together and we're tightening them up and we're bumping out some of the letters. So a contraction with the word not, our first word is going to stay the same. And our second word, not, is going to get shortened. The O in the word not is going to get taken out and it's going to be replaced with an apostrophe. So instead of it being N-O-T, it's going to be N''T. So do not becomes don't. So D-O, same as do, stays the same, right? Then N''T, don't. Are not, we are not going outside today. Are stays the same, A-R-E, and then not becomes N''T, aren't. Should not becomes shouldn't. So first word stays the same. Second word, the word not, has the O replaced by an apostrophe, and you write them all together as one word. Now we're going to get into our weekly stories. Our first story is called Biblioburo. So this is a really nice story. It's a narrative nonfiction. So a narrative nonfiction is a story that's being told by a person who was there, and they are the narrator. They're telling you their own story, and it's a nonfiction story. So let's go ahead and take a listen.
Genre: narrative nonfiction. Biblioburo, a true story from Colombia. Jeanette Winter. Essential question: how can people help out in their community? Read about a man who travels to bring books to faraway villages that have none. Deep in the jungles of Colombia, there lives a man who loves books. His name is Luis. As soon as he reads one book, he brings home another. Soon the house is filled with books. His wife, Diana, grumbles. "What are we going to do? Eat books with our rice?" Luis thinks long and hard. At last, an idea pops into his head. "I can bring my books into the faraway hills to share with those who have none. One burro could carry books, and another burro could carry me and more books." Luis buys 2 sturdy little burros. He names them Alpha and Beto. He builds crates to hang on their backs and paints signs. Biblioburo, the burro library. Then Diana fills the crates with books. Every week, Luis and Alpha and Beto set off across the countryside to faraway villages in the lonely hills. This week, they traveled to El Tormento. Stop and check. Ask and answer questions. Why are Luis, Alpha, and Beto going to El Tormento? Go back to the text to find the answer. When the sun burns high in the sky, Luis and the burros stop at a stream to drink the cool water. After they have their fill, Beto balks. Luis pulls and pulls on Beto's reins, but Beto won't budge. "The children are waiting for us." At last the burro gives in and steps across the stream. The Biblioburo continues on its way over the hills until at last Luis sees houses below. The children of El Tormento run to meet him. Luis insists on reading a story before they choose books to borrow. "Today I have a surprise for you," he says. He reaches behind the books and pulls out a bundle of masks. Little piglets. "Put on a mask and I'll read you a tale about pigs. When the story ends, it's time for everyone to choose a book. The children hold their books close as they say goodbye and walk home. Luis and Alpha and Beta head back over and around the hills, across the grasslands and streams, and into the sunset. Stop and check. Reread. Where are Luis, Alpha, and Beta going now? Reread to check your understanding. At home, Luis feeds his hungry burros, and Diana feeds her hungry husband. But then, instead of sleeping, Luis picks up his book and reads deep into the night. And far away in the hills, candles and lanterns burn as the children read borrowed books deep into their night, too.
All right, that takes us to the end of our first story. Now, our next one is a folktale. So a folktale is a story that comes from a particular country, and it's usually been passed down through the generations by people retelling it verbally to each other.
Genre: folktale. Compare texts. Read a folktale from Russia about neighbors helping each other out. The enormous turnip. One night a farmer went out in his garden and planted turnip seeds. The next morning, the family looked out the window and saw a huge turnip growing in the garden. It was so big, it blocked the sunlight. "We will have lots of turnip soup tonight," cried the children. The farmer hurried outside to harvest the turnip. He pulled and tugged, but the turnip would not come out of the ground. The farmer's wife and children came to help. The family worked together, but the turnip still would not budge. Other people in their village saw the family tugging at the turnip. "Let us help you," they cried. "Many hands make light work." The villagers had an idea. They held onto each other's waists to make a chain. Together they all pulled at the turnip in the ground. Finally, the ground rumbled, and the turnip popped out. The farmer chopped up the turnip, and his wife got a big pot. "Turnip soup for all who helped," he announced. All the neighbors took a serving. "We all worked together to find a solution to the problem," said the farmer. "So now we all get a tasty meal as a reward." Make connections. How did the farmer and his family help out their community? Think about the other selections you've read this week. What are some other ways people help in their communities?
All right, let's get into our reading and writing workshop, and we're going to read the story Lighting Lives.
Genre: narrative nonfiction. Lighting lives. When Debbie Tiwa was your age, her home had no electricity. She could not flip a light switch to read at night. She lit a candle. She could not cook on a stove or in a microwave oven. Her family cooked over a fire. Debbie lived in Arizona. When she was 10, she moved to a new home. Her new home had electricity. She could turn on a lamp and use a phone. She liked it. Debbie Tiwa lived in a home that had small windows, like this one. There was not a lot of light. As she grew, Debbie realized she wanted to learn more about solar power. Solar power is electricity that comes from the sun. Solar panels are put on the roof of a building. The sunlight hits these panels and turns the sunlight into electricity. Debbie thought a lot about solar power. Then she had an idea. She was excited. she went to work for a company that provided solar power to people's homes. She believed it would be a good solution for people who had no electricity. Debbie likes solving problems. Debbie also thought of people in villages like the one she lived in as a child. The people in these small towns did not have any electricity. Solar power would work well there because there is a lot of sun in Arizona. Debbie decided to help these families get solar power. To get a family started, Debbie helps them borrow money from a bank to buy the panels. After they get the money from the bank, they have some time to pay the money back. And the good news is, there is no cost for using the sun's power. Solar panels are now used on many homes. Debbie travels across lands outside cities in Arizona and New Mexico. She travels to the countryside. She helps Hopi and Navajo people get solar power. Debbie believes deeply in her work and insists that families learn about how solar power can help them. They are happy to do what she demands. Debbie also travels to schools and summer camps to teach Hopi children about solar energy. Debbie helps many Hopi people. Debbie drives her truck from place to place. It is lonely with no one riding along. Then she thinks about how exciting it was to use electricity for the first time. Now families can do the things you do without thinking about them. They can heat their homes or turn on a light. Debbie says she is lighting up people's lives. Make connections. How does Debbie help her community? Talk with a partner about solar power. Could you use it where you live? Ask and answer questions. Asking yourself questions helps you think about information in the selection. You can ask questions before, during, and after you read. Find text evidence. As I read page 216 of Lighting Lives, I ask myself, what is solar power? I will reread to find the answer to this question. As she grew, Debbie realized she wanted to learn more about solar power. Solar power is electricity that comes from the sun. Solar panels are put on the roof of a building. The sunlight hits these panels and turns the sunlight into electricity. I read that solar power is electricity that comes from the sun. From this, I understand that solar panels use energy from the sun. Author's purpose. Authors write to answer, explain, or describe. Find text evidence. When I read page 216 of Lighting Lives, I learned how Debbie Tiwa got the idea to help others. I think this is a clue to the author's purpose. Graphic organizer. Clue. Author tells how Debbie Tiwa got the idea to help others. Narrative nonfiction. Lighting Lives is a narrative nonfiction. A narrative nonfiction tells a story about a person by a narrator. Can have text features. Find text evidence. I can use what I read to tell that Lighting Lives is narrative nonfiction. A narrator tells about a real person, Debbie Tiwa. Text features. Photos show something in the text or give more information about a topic. Captions give information about the photo. Synonyms. Synonyms are words that have almost the same meaning. Big and large are synonyms. Find text evidence. I read that Debbie insists that families learn about how solar power can help them, and they are happy to do what she demands. Insists and demands are synonyms. They both mean asks for something in a strong or firm way. Debbie believes deeply in her work and insists that families learn about how solar power can help them. They are happy to do what she demands.
All right, that takes us to the end of our notes for this week. If you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I hope you have an amazing day. Take care.